I'm Martin. I'm 35 years old, and my own family laughed in my face when they told me I wasn't invited to a family reunion I had paid for. Before I tell you about the police report and the security footage that changed everything, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. It's always amazing to see how far these stories travel. It started at a Sunday dinner, one of those tense, mandatory family gatherings that feel more like a parole hearing than a celebration. I brought a nice bottle of wine, the kind my dad likes but would never buy for himself. I offered to pay for the groceries as usual. For an hour, we danced around the elephant in the room. The upcoming family reunion in the mountains. The one I had spent weeks planning. The one I had put a hefty deposit on with my own credit card. Finally, over dessert, I couldn't take the silence anymore. I cleared my throat and said with a forced smile, "So, I can't wait for the reunion. The pictures of that cabin look amazing, right?" My sister, Chloe, the golden child, let out a short, sharp laugh. It wasn't a happy sound. It was dismissive. She looked at my mom, then my dad, a smirk playing on her lips. "Oh, Martin," she said, her voice dripping with pity. "You didn't know? You're not invited. It's for, real family." The table erupted. Not in outrage, but in laughter. My dad chuckled into his napkin. My mom gave a weak, apologetic smile that didn't reach her eyes. I just sat there, the wine turning to acid in my stomach. I looked at each of their smiling faces, and for the first time, I saw them for who they really were. I placed my napkin on the table, smiled back, and walked out without another word. The drive home was a blur. I didn't feel anger, not yet. Just a profound, hollow emptiness. For the next few days, I went through the motions. Work, gym, sleep. My phone was silent. No calls, no texts. It was as if I had simply ceased to exist. Part of me, a small, wounded part, kept hoping my mom would call, that this was all just a twisted joke. The call never came. Then, 6 days after that dinner, on a Saturday morning, my world splintered. I was jolted awake not by my alarm, but by a loud, insistent banging on my front door. It wasn't a knock. It was a demand. It sounded like someone was trying to break the door down. Bang, bang, bang. It shook the entire apartment frame. I threw on a pair of sweats, my heart pounding against my ribs. Who could possibly be here at 8:42 a.m. on a Saturday, trying to knock my door off its hinges? I crept to the door, my breath held tight in my chest, and peered through the peephole. My blood ran cold. Standing on my doorstep, their faces contorted in masks of pure rage, were my father, my mother, and my sister, Chloe. My father raised his fist to pound on the door again, and I knew this wasn't a social call. This was an ambush, and I had a pretty good idea of what had happened in the last 6 days to bring this storm to my doorstep. Before I tell you what I did to provoke that morning raid, you need to understand my role in the family. It wasn't son or brother. For the last decade, my primary role was the Bank of Martin. Started small about 10 years ago. I just landed my first real job out of law school. My salary wasn't huge, but it was steady, and for the first time I had disposable income. My mom called me one day, her voice tight with panic. She needed an emergency root canal, and their insurance wouldn't cover the whole thing. It was a few $1,000s they just didn't have. "Of course, Mom," I said without hesitation. I transferred the money that afternoon. She cried with relief, told me I was her savior. It felt good to be needed, to be the one who could solve problems. That feeling, I later realized, was a very expensive addiction. That one-time rescue mission slowly morphed into a permanent support system. When my dad's car insurance premiums went up after an accident, I covered the difference. When Chloe decided she wanted to go to a private college that was well beyond their means, I was the one who co-signed the loans and helped pay for her tuition, ensuring her college fund was always topped up. Her spring break trips to Cancun, my treat. The down payment on her first car, a graduation gift from her big brother. Over the years, I covered everything. Unexpected medical bills, car repairs, even their credit card debt. I paid for family vacations I was often too busy with work to attend. "We'll miss you, honey," my mom would say. But we'll send you pictures. And they did. Pictures of them smiling on a beach in Florida or skiing in Colorado, all on my dime. I never kept a running tally. I didn't want to, because if I did, I'd have to admit to myself that this wasn't help. It was dependency. They never asked me how my own finances were. They never asked if I was saving for a house or for my own future. My salary was just considered a part of the collective family pot, a pot that only I seemed to be filling. And I let it happen because a small part of me believed that if I stopped paying, they'd stop loving me. I thought I was buying security. I was just funding my own prison. This year, I was determined to do something different. I wanted a real family experience, one that I could actually be a part of. That's where the idea for the reunion in the mountains came from. I spent weeks, literal weeks, scouring rental sites. I found this perfect cabin, a beautiful 6-bedroom place with a huge stone fireplace and a deck that overlooked a valley. It was big enough for all of us. Mom and Dad, Chloe and her boyfriend, my brother Leo and his wife, and me. I created a group chat. Hey everyone, found the perfect spot for a family reunion this fall. Check out this link. The initial replies were enthusiastic. Emojis, exclamation points. Looks amazing, Chloe texted. Great find, son, my dad replied. Feeling encouraged, I laid out the plan. I would cover the deposit to secure the place, and we could all figure out the rest of the cost later. I knew, of course, that figuring it out meant I'd end up paying the lion's share, if not all of it. But I didn't care. I was just excited. I put the $2,000 deposit on my American Express and sent a confirmation screenshot to the group. It's booked. October 12th to the 15th. Get ready for some mountain air. And then, silence. Complete, deafening silence. A day went by. I texted, hey, just wanted to make sure everyone saw the dates. Do those work for you? The message was seen. All of them saw it. No reply. Another 2 days passed. Just thinking about activities. I texted, trying to sound cheerful. Maybe some hiking? Or we could rent a boat on the lake. Seen. No reply. A week later, I tried one last time. Hey guys, the final payment is due in a couple of weeks. Just wanted to get a head count so I can plan for food. Everyone's still in. Seen. By every single one of them. And nothing. A cold dread started to pool in my stomach. This wasn't just them being busy. This was deliberate. Felt like a punishment, but I couldn't figure out what my crime was. I was being stonewalled by my own family, and the silence was louder than any argument we'd ever had. It was a coordinated freeze-out, and I was the only one left standing in the cold. I was starting to realize the cabin wasn't the only thing I'd paid for. I'd also paid for the privilege of being ignored. After nearly 2 weeks of that suffocating silence, I couldn't take it anymore. The anxiety was eating me alive. I convinced myself I was overreacting, that maybe their phones were broken, or they were just incredibly busy. It was a stupid lie, but it was the only thing keeping me from completely losing my mind. I decided I had to force the issue, a face-to-face meeting. I called my mom. She answered on the second ring, her voice sickeningly sweet, as if nothing was wrong. Martin, honey, I was just thinking about you. My heart ached with a pathetic sense of relief. See? It was all in my head. Hey Mom, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I was thinking, it's been a while. How about I host a Sunday dinner at my place this weekend? I'll cook. Oh, honey, that's so sweet. But the house is such a mess. She lied smoothly. Why don't you come over here? I'll make your favorite pot roast. It was a test, and I knew it. Coming to their house meant playing on their turf by their rules. But I was desperate. Sounds great, Mom. I'll be there around 6. That Sunday, I drove to my parents' house with a knot of dread in my stomach. I walked in, armed with a $30 bottle of Cabernet Sauvignon and a bag of groceries for the dinner I knew I'd end up paying for anyway. The atmosphere was thick with unspoken tension. My dad grunted a hello from his recliner. Chloe gave me a brittle smile that didn't reach her eyes. My mom fussed around the kitchen, her movements just a little too frantic. We made small talk. The weather, work, my dad's golf game. It was all painfully, aggressively normal. But underneath it, the silence from the group chat hummed like a high-voltage wire. They were all there, all talking to me, but the question of the reunion hung in the air, a ghost at the dinner table. I felt like I was in a play where everyone but me had read the script. They were waiting for me to say my line, to walk into the trap they had so carefully set. And like a fool, I prepared to do just that. The 4 days after that disastrous dinner were some of the longest of my life. The hollow feeling had been replaced by a slow-burning rage. Every time I replayed Chloe's words, my dad's chuckle, my mom's weak smile, the fire got hotter. It wasn't just about the reunion anymore. It was about a lifetime of being treated like an ATM with a heartbeat. I did 2 things on Monday morning. First, I called the rental company for the cabin. The woman on the phone was very understanding. "Family emergency," I said, the lie tasting like ash in my mouth. "I need to cancel. I lost a few $100s of the deposit, but I didn't care. It was a small price to pay for what I was about to do." Second, I logged into my online banking. A few years back, when my mom had a health scare, I opened a joint savings account with my dad. The idea was for it to be an emergency fund. I put in an initial $5,000 and had been adding a few hundred to it every month. To my knowledge, they had never put a single cent into it. It was my money, but his name was on it, a gesture of trust one was beginning to deeply regret. I couldn't remove him without his signature, but I could set up alerts. I put a notification on the account for any withdrawal attempt over $100. Then I waited. I didn't have to wait long. On Friday afternoon, my phone buzzed. It was an email from the bank. Subject: withdrawal attempt notice. My heart hammered against my ribs. I opened it. "A withdrawal of $2,400 from your joint savings account initiated by Richard, my last name, has been declined due to insufficient verification." They actually did it. They kicked me out of the family and then, not even a week later, tried to take my money. The sheer, unmitigated gall of it was breathtaking. I took a screenshot of the denial notice. My hands were shaking, but not with fear. It was with a strange, exhilarating sense of power. I opened up the family group chat, the one that had been silent for weeks. I attached the image. Then I typed out a single sentence. "Payment denied. Must be that real family policy." I hit send. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I was in control. The silence that followed was different. It wasn't them ignoring me. It was the stunned silence of a predator who just realized its prey has teeth. The response to my text didn't come electronically. It came in person with all the subtlety of a SWAT team raid. The next morning, the banging on my door was relentless. I took a deep breath, unlocked the deadbolt, and opened the door. The sight was almost comical. My dad, red-faced and sputtering. My mom, clutching her pearls, trying to look scandalized. And Chloe, standing behind them, filming the whole thing on her phone with a smug look on her face. "What is the meaning of this?" my dad boomed, trying to push past me into my apartment. I stood my ground, blocking the doorway. "The meaning of what, Dad?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm. "The bank. You locked me out of my own money. That's family money, Martin." "Is it?" I said, raising an eyebrow. "That's funny, because I seem to be the only family member who has ever put money into that account. And last I checked, I wasn't considered real family anymore." Chloe lowered her phone. "Oh my God. You are so dramatic," she sneered. "It was a joke. You can't take a joke." "A joke," I repeated, a humorless laugh escaping my lips. "A joke is when everyone laughs, Chloe. When only one side is laughing, it's called bullying. Or, in this case, a public declaration." My mom stepped forward, her voice trembling with practiced fragility. "Martin, honey, we're worried about you. This isn't like you. Your father needs that money for property taxes." It was another lie. I knew for a fact their property taxes weren't due for another 4 months. They wanted the money for something else. Maybe a vacation. Maybe a new toy for Chloe. It didn't matter. What mattered was the effortless way the lies rolled off their tongues. "I'm fine, Mom," I said, my voice hardening. In fact, I've never been better. Now, if you're here to scream at me, you can do it from the hallway. You're not coming in. My dad's face went from red to purple. He looked like he was about to explode. You listen to me? He snarled, pointing a finger in my face. You will go to that bank on Monday and you will release that money, or so help me. I just stared at him, at the finger shaking in my face, and I didn't feel a shred of fear. The man I had been so desperate to please my entire life was standing in front of me, throwing a temper tantrum like a toddler, and I was finally seeing him clearly. The spell was broken. I let his threat hang in the air for a moment, savoring the shocked look on their faces that I wasn't immediately cowering. Or so help you what, Dad? I asked quietly. What exactly are you going to do? Cut me off? I think we've already established my status in this family. He was speechless. It was clear he'd expected me to fold, to apologize, to do whatever it took to get back in their good graces. He had no plan for this version of me, the one with a spine. I looked past him, at my mother's fake tears and Chloe's smug pout. You know, I said, my voice conversational. This whole thing has really made me reevaluate some of my recent financial decisions. For instance, that cabin I booked for the real family reunion. Their expressions shifted. I could see the gears turning in their heads. By the way, I added, delivering the line with a calm I didn't know I possessed. I canceled the reservation on Monday. The company was very understanding. I'll be getting most of the deposit back by next Friday. The silence was absolute. My dad's jaw literally dropped. Chloe's phone drooped in her hand. My mom's fake sobbing stopped mid-hiccup. They had been so certain they held all the cards. They thought they could discard me and keep all the benefits that came with me. The idea that I would proactively take away one of their toys was something they had never considered. You did what? My dad stammered. I canceled it, I repeated. Why would I keep a reservation for a party I'm not invited to? That doesn't make any sense. I then proceeded to do something I should have done a decade ago. I gave them the reckoning. Let's talk about family money, shall we? I began, my voice cold and precise, like a lawyer presenting a case. Let's talk about the $5,000 for Mom's dental surgery 3 years ago. Let's talk about the $700 every 6 months for your car insurance, Dad. Let's talk about the $12,000 I've contributed to Chloe's college fund over the last 4 years, not to mention the car. Let's talk about the family vacations, the dinners, the groceries. I listed every major expense I could remember, my voice getting stronger with each item. Their faces went from shock to pale. I took a step back into my apartment. The family money you're talking about has only ever flowed one way, from my pocket to yours. As of today, I said, my hand on the doorknob, the Bank of Martin is officially and permanently closed. I closed the door on their stunned faces, slid the deadbolt into place, and for the first time in days, I let myself breathe. The hour after I closed the door on my family was surreal. The adrenaline faded, leaving a shaky, hollow feeling behind. I expected to feel guilty or at least conflicted. Instead, I just felt quiet. I made coffee, my hands still trembling slightly, and sat on my couch, staring at the wall. My phone buzzed with angry texts from Chloe and a string of missed calls from my parents. I ignored them all. Just as I was starting to second-guess myself, wondering if I had gone too far, my phone rang again. The caller ID read, Grandpa Arthur. My grandfather was my dad's dad, a quiet, no-nonsense man of 85. After my grandmother's funeral 5 years ago, he had become even more reserved. We weren't incredibly close, but there was a deep, unspoken respect between us. My grandmother had been my champion, and I think he saw her spirit in me. I hesitated, then answered. Hello, Martin, he said, his voice raspy but clear. There was no preamble. I heard what happened. My stomach clenched. Oh, your father called me, he said. Gave me some long, sorry tale about how you're being disrespectful, how you've gone off the rails. Tried to paint you as the villain. I waited, my breath caught in my throat. I've known my son for 60 years, Grandpa Arthur continued, his voice firm, And I've known you for 35. I know who pays the bills. I know who shows up. And I know who has been taken for granted. Tears pricked my eyes. I couldn't speak. I'm calling to tell you one thing, he said. You're not wrong. Don't let them make you think you are. What they did was cruel, and what you're doing now is necessary. He paused. This isn't about any future inheritance or family politics. This is about right and wrong. Your grandmother. She would be so proud of you for finally standing up for yourself. Thank you, Grandpa. I managed to choke out. All right then, he said, his tone softening slightly. Just wanted you to know you're not alone in this. I'm on your side. He hung up. The call lasted less than 2 minutes, but it was like a steel beam being inserted into my spine. He had given me the one thing my parents never had: validation. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't the bad guy. And I was not alone. The validation from my grandfather was a lifeline, because the storm was far from over. In fact, my family was just getting started. 2 days later, my older brother, Leo, called. Hey, he said, his voice low. Can we meet? Not at your place or mine. Somewhere neutral. Leo was the family's quiet one. He'd married his high school sweetheart, had 2 kids, and generally tried to stay out of the drama. He was a good man, but he was conflict-averse to a fault. His silence at the dinner had hurt, but I understood it. He was just trying to survive. We met at a busy coffee shop downtown. He looked terrible. There were dark circles under his eyes, and he couldn't stop fidgeting with his cup. I'm sorry, Martin, he said before I could even sit down. I should have said something at the dinner. I should have walked out with you. There's no excuse. It's okay, Leo, I said, and I meant it. I get it. No, he insisted, shaking his head. You don't. It's worse than you think. That's why I had to see you. Mom and Dad. They've launched a full-scale smear campaign. I felt a cold knot form in my gut. What are you talking about? They're calling everyone, he said, his voice barely a whisper. Aunts, uncles, cousins. They're telling them you had some kind of mental breakdown, that you're unstable and vindictive. Mom is crying on the phone to Aunt Susan, saying she's scared of you. Dad is telling Uncle Rob that you're trying to steal his retirement money. I just stared at him, speechless. It wasn't enough to exclude me. It wasn't enough to try and take my money. They had to destroy my reputation, too. They needed to make me the villain to justify their own horrific behavior. I can't do it anymore, Martin, Leo said. His eyes filled with a desperate exhaustion I recognized all too well. I can't raise my kids in this poison. We want out. We've been talking about moving to Denver for years, but we've never had the funds to make the jump. He wasn't asking for money. He was just confessing, sharing the weight of his own quiet desperation. But in that moment, I knew what I had to do. The Bank of Martin was closed for my parents. But for my brother, the one person who had the courage to tell me the truth, for him it was about to make one last, very important withdrawal. Helping Leo was the easiest decision I'd made in years. The next day, I wrote him a check for $7,000. Don't call it a loan, I told him. Call it an escape fund. Go build a good life for your family. The look of stunned, tearful gratitude on his face was worth more than every dollar I'd ever spent on our parents. I spent the next week trying to build a firewall around myself. I blocked my parents and Chloe on my phone and social media. I gave my best friend, Nate, who is also a lawyer, a heads up about the situation. I was trying to move on, to find a new normal that didn't involve constant anxiety. And then the letter arrived. It came in a crisp, windowed envelope from a high-end jewelry store I'd never heard of. It looked like junk mail and I almost threw it away. But something made me open it. It was a bill, past due notice to be precise, for a diamond solitaire necklace. The amount due was $3,600, and the name on the bill was mine. I stood in my kitchen, the letter trembling in my hand. It had to be a mistake, clerical error. I'd never been to this store. I'd never buy a $3,600 necklace. I immediately called the number on the invoice. Yes, Mr. My last name, the polite voice on the other end said after I gave my name. I see the account here. It was opened 3 weeks ago at our downtown location. There must be a mistake, I said, my voice tight. I've never been to your store. This is some kind of fraud. I see, the woman said, her tone shifting to something more serious. Well, the account was opened with a driver's license and a credit card application. The signature on file matches the license. My blood turned to ice. Can you tell me the date of the transaction? Of course. It was on September 21st. September 21st. The day before my mom's birthday. I felt the air leave my lungs. I remembered a conversation from a month ago. My mom had called, asking for a copy of my driver's license and my social security number. She'd claimed it was for some insurance paperwork she was sorting out for the family. Like a fool, I had texted her the photos without a second thought. The signature? I whispered, my throat closing up. Can you describe it? It's just your name, sir. Martin, my last name. But I don't sign my full first name. I never have. I sign with my initial, M, my last name. But my dad, my brother, and my grandfather all have names that start with other letters. There was only one other person in my family who might not know that detail, who might just copy the name she saw on the driver's license. My mother. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. I stumbled back against the counter, the phone slipping from my grasp. This wasn't just about money anymore. This wasn't a misunderstanding or a family squabble. This was a crime. My own mother had used my identity, my good credit that I had worked so hard to build, to steal from me. The betrayal was so profound, so absolute, it felt like it hollowed me out from the inside. The dinner, the money, the insults, all of it paled in comparison to this. This was the point of no return. For a few hours, I was completely paralyzed. I just sat on my kitchen floor, staring at the bill. The scope of my mother's deception was staggering. It wasn't just opportunistic. It was premeditated. She had asked for my information with a plan already in motion. The thought made me physically ill. Finally, the shock gave way to a cold, hard clarity. The part of me that still held out a sliver of hope for my family died on that kitchen floor. The son died, and the lawyer took his place. I picked up my phone and called Nate. Nate, I said, my voice devoid of any emotion. I need you, not as a friend, but as my legal counsel. I explained the situation in clipped, precise sentences. The joint account, the reunion, the jewelry store, the stolen identity. He listened patiently, letting out a low whistle when I finished. Wow, he said. Martin, I'm so sorry. This is a felony. You know that, right? Identity theft is a serious charge. I know, I replied, and I want to press charges. Are you sure? He asked gently. This is your mom we're talking about. Once you file that police report, there's no going back. This will blow up the entire family. The family is already blown up, I said flatly. They just haven't realized the explosion is heading their way. She crossed a line, Nate. A line I didn't even know existed. If I let this go, what's next? A car? A mortgage? He was silent for a moment. Okay, he said, his voice all business now. Here's what we do. First, you file a police report for identity theft. Get the case number. Second, you contact the credit bureaus, TransUnion, Equifax, Experian, and place a fraud alert on your file. Third, you send a certified letter to the jewelry store with a copy of the police report, stating that you are disputing the charge as fraudulent. I spent the rest of the day following his instructions. Walking into the police station was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. Explaining to a uniformed officer that your own mother has stolen your identity is a unique kind of humiliation. But I did it. I walked out with a case number in my hand. That evening, I drafted an email. It was addressed to my father, my mother, and my sister. Nate read it over before I sent it. It was short and brutally professional. Subject: formal notice regarding fraudulent activity. To whom it may concern. This email serves as formal notification that I have filed a police report with the City Police Department regarding a case of identity theft perpetrated against me. A fraudulent account was opened in my name at jewelry store name. The case number is case number. All future communications regarding this or any other financial or legal matter should be directed to my legal counsel, Nate Chun, at Nate's Law Firm Information. Do not contact me directly. Sincerely, Martin, my last name. I attached a PDF of the police report. Then I hit send. This is the moment that changed everything, when I finally took back control of my life. Thank you for staying with me this far. You're amazing. Please help me out by liking this video and commenting the number 1 down below, so I know you've been on this journey with me. It doesn't just help more people find this story. It lets me know that my experiences mean something to someone out there. Your support is the biggest motivation for me to continue sharing the rest of this journey. The effect of that email was instantaneous and explosive. It was like dropping a match into a fireworks factory. My phone, which I had mercifully put on silent, lit up with a relentless barrage of notifications. Blocked calls from my parents. Hysterical, rambling texts from Chloe that swung wildly between threats and accusations. How could you do this to your own mother? One read. Another followed a minute later. You're going to send mom to jail over a stupid necklace? You're a monster. And then, the one that showed their true colors. Dad says you're going to ruin the family's name. He's going to sue you for slander. I read them, a detached, clinical curiosity replacing any emotional response. They weren't sorry. They weren't ashamed. They were just furious that they had finally, after all these years, faced a consequence. They weren't afraid of what my mom did. They were afraid of her getting caught. I didn't respond. I forwarded the screenshots to Nate with the simple message, "It started." He replied, "Good. Let them panic." The panic escalated 2 days later. I got a call from a Detective Riley, the officer handling my case. "Mr. My last name," he said, his voice professional. "Just wanted to give you an update on your identity theft report. We subpoenaed the security footage from the jewelry store for the date of the transaction." "And?" I asked, my heart pounding. "And it's crystal clear," he said. "The video shows a woman, who matches the driver's license photo of your mother, Brenda, my last name, at the counter. It shows her signing the credit application. The store manager even remembered her. Said she was talking about buying a little birthday gift for herself because her son was so generous. I had to sit down. Hearing it, seeing it in my mind's eye, made it viscerally real. The casual deception, the way she used my name, my reputation for generosity, as a tool for her theft. "So we have everything we need," Detective Riley continued. "The next step is to bring her in for questioning. We can have an officer at her residence this afternoon." This was it, the moment of truth. The legal system was moving forward, and my mother was about to face the very real possibility of a criminal record. The thought didn't bring me any joy, but it didn't bring me any regret, either. It just felt necessary. It was the price of peace. The threat of a police car pulling into their driveway did what my words never could. It shattered their delusion. The hysterical text stopped. Instead, I got a call from my dad's number. I let it go to voicemail. The message he left was unrecognizable. The booming, arrogant man was gone, replaced by a desperate, pleading whisper. "Martin, son, please, call me. Your mother, she's a wreck. We can fix this. Just tell us what you want. Anything." I played the message for Nate. "They're ready to negotiate," he said. "It's time to set your terms." He arranged the meeting. Not at a home, not at an office, but in a small, sterile conference room at a neutral law firm. I walked in with Nate. My parents were already there, sitting on the opposite side of a large mahogany table. They looked smaller, older, defeated. Chloe was nowhere to be seen. I sat down and didn't say a word. I let Nate speak. "Thank you for coming," Nate said, his voice calm and authoritative. "My client is prepared to ask the district attorney not to proceed with criminal charges on a number of strict, non-negotiable conditions." My parents leaned forward, their eyes wide with a mixture of hope and fear. "First," Nate continued, The outstanding balance of $3,600 at the jewelry store will be paid in full by you within 24 hours. Proof of payment will be sent to my office. My dad nodded numbly. Second, you will both sign this document. Nate slid a piece of paper across the table. It's a formal agreement stating that you will never again attempt to use Martin's credit, name, or financial resources for any reason. It also includes a no-contact clause. You will not call, text, email, or visit him unless he initiates the contact. My mother let out a small sob. Third, Nate said, his voice firm, you will make a full and complete retraction of the slanderous statements you have made about Martin's mental stability to all family members you have spoken with. This was my condition, the one that mattered most. My dad looked at me, his eyes pleading. Martin, she's your mother. I met his gaze, and for the first time he was the one who looked away. And I was your son, I said, my voice quiet but unshakable. The son you were happy to use, mock, and discard. The son whose name you were happy to destroy. This isn't a negotiation. These are the terms for my silence. Take them or leave them. They took them. They signed the papers. And as I walked out of that conference room, leaving them sitting in the wreckage they had built, I didn't feel anger or victory. I just felt the quiet, profound relief of a man who had finally, after a lifetime of servitude, bought his own freedom. The 6 months that followed were like waking up from a long, feverish dream. The silence from my family was no longer a punishment. It was a gift. My phone didn't ring with demands. My email inbox wasn't filled with passive-aggressive guilt trips. The constant, low-grade anxiety that had been my companion for years simply evaporated. Without the financial and emotional drain of my family, my life blossomed in unexpected ways. I poured my energy into my work. My focus was sharper, my arguments in court more incisive. My boss, Mr. Davenport, a senior partner at the firm, called me into his office one day. Martin, he said, getting straight to the point, the partners have been watching you. Your work on the Henderson case was brilliant. We're putting you on the track for a promotion to junior partner next year. I was stunned. It was a goal I had been working towards for years, one that had always felt just out of reach because I was so often distracted, so drained. Now it was happening. My success was my own, earned through my own merit, not because I was funding someone else's life. It was a powerful, grounding feeling. My personal life improved, too. I had more time, more energy. I started hiking again on weekends, something I hadn't done in years. I reconnected with old friends who had drifted away during the years I was consumed by family drama. One afternoon, I got a postcard in the mail. It was a picture of the snow-capped mountains of Denver. On the back, in my brother Leo's familiar scrawl, it read, Martin, made it. The kids love it here. Sarah found a great job. I'm starting my own little handyman business. It's tough, but it's ours. Thank you for everything. You didn't just give me money. You gave me a chance at peace. I hope you're finding yours. Your brother, Leo. I stuck the postcard on my fridge. It was a daily reminder that breaking the cycle of toxicity didn't just save me. It had given my brother's family a chance to thrive, too. I was building a new definition of family, one based not on obligation or transaction, but on mutual respect and genuine care. And for the first time, I was starting to understand what happiness felt like. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet. It was peaceful. It was mine. Just when I thought I had truly closed that chapter of my life, one last echo from the past found its way to me. Came in the form of a phone call from an unknown number. I normally wouldn't answer, but I was expecting a call from a client, so I picked up. Martin? Honey, is that you? The voice was syrupy sweet and instantly recognizable. It was my Aunt Susan, my mother's sister, the family's chief gossip and my mother's most loyal lieutenant. Hello, Aunt Susan, I said, my voice neutral. My guard went up immediately. Oh, Martin, I'm so glad I reached you, she gushed, as if we were the best of friends. I was just talking to your mother the other day. Oh, the poor dear. She's just heartbroken. She misses you so much. I remained silent. I wasn't going to give her anything to work with. We were all just saying, she continued, her voice taking on a wheedling tone. Life is so short, you know? Family is the most important thing. Whatever happened, it's all in the past. Your parents are getting older. They need you. It was a masterclass in manipulation. The appeal to duty, the glossing over of facts, the heavy-handed guilt trip. A year ago, it would have worked. A year ago, that phrase, they need you, would have been a key in the lock of my resolve. But I wasn't that person anymore. My parents have each other, I said calmly. And they have Chloe. She let out a frustrated little sigh. But it's not the same. A mother needs her son. Martin, she made a mistake. Can't you find it in your heart to forgive her? For the sake of the family. And that's when I finally understood. To her, to them, family wasn't a source of love or support. It was a cage. It was a weapon they used to keep everyone in line. My freedom was a threat to their entire system. Aunt Susan, I said, and my voice was so firm it surprised even me. What my mother did wasn't a mistake. A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk from the store. Committing a felony in your son's name is a deliberate act of betrayal. There is no family that can excuse that. I heard her sharp intake of breath. I have found my peace, I continued, and I am not willing to set myself on fire to keep others warm anymore. I wish you well, but please, do not call me about this again. I hung up before she could reply. I blocked the number, and I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that the war was finally over. I had faced the final test, the last attempt to pull me back into the poison, and I had not wavered. The echo had faded, and all that was left was a peaceful, promising silence. It's been a year now since I closed the door on my family. There are still moments, late at night, when a pang of sadness hits me. It's not a longing for what I had, but a mourning for what I never will have. A normal, loving family. I've come to accept that. Some things can't be fixed, and some relationships are just broken beyond repair. My life isn't perfect, but it's mine. My promotion came through. I'm a junior partner now, and the work is challenging and fulfilling. My salary is my own, to save or to spend as I see fit. I talk to my grandpa every Sunday. We don't talk about the drama. We talk about the weather, about books, about the simple things. Leo and I video chat every few weeks, and seeing his kids growing up happy and free from that toxic cloud is a constant source of joy. I don't hate my parents or my sister. I don't feel much of anything for them anymore. They are strangers to me now, characters in a story from a life I no longer live. I hear whispers through the grapevine that things aren't going well for them. Without my financial support, their lifestyle has taken a significant hit. Chloe is apparently still living at home, and the resentment is building. But that's their world, their mess to live in. Someone once told me that the best revenge is living well. I used to think that sounded a bit empty, but now I get it. My revenge wasn't the police report. It wasn't the final confrontation. My revenge is my quiet Saturday mornings, with a cup of coffee and a good book. It's the hiking trips with friends who celebrate my successes. It's the peace of mind that comes from knowing my home is my sanctuary, and no one can barge in and demand a piece of me. That was my real revenge. I let them live in the world they built, and I walked away. And in doing so, I didn't just find freedom. I found myself. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it resonated with you in some way. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice to protect your own peace? I'd be honored if you shared your thoughts or a piece of your own story in the comments below. And please, don't forget to like this video and subscribe so you don't miss what I have to share next.